Disaster happened in 1958 in Spring Hill in Canada, where a mine collapsed and killed a lot of workers there. And the reason I think it's important is because even before we knew of the extent of global warming and the damage that the burning of carbon was doing, workers and poor people were dying down in mines every day of the week, and that is still happening now. When we're talking about a just transition, and we're talking about, you hear people in this government talking about having 1 million electric cars, the amount of mining that would have to do to get all the minerals needed for those cars is insane. And a lot of it is being mined now in the same conditions that the coal was being mined in the 19th century even, often by children. And so we need free public transport, we need to get people out of cars. We also, I meant to sing, I don't know why I gave such a big long explanation, but just to say the last verse of this song, it goes, 8 days passed and some were rescued, leaving the rest to die alone. Through all their lives they dug a grave 2 miles of earth for a marking stone. And I think it's time that we bury the grave of, bury capitalism in its grave. This song. In the town of Spring Hill, Nova Scotia, deep in the heart of the Cumberland mine, the day still comes and the sun still shines, but it's dark as a grave in the miner's tomb, dark as a grave in the miner's tomb. Down at the coalface, miners working, rattle of the belts and the quarter blades. Then a rumble of rock and the walls close round. Living and the dead man 2 miles down. Living and the dead man 2 miles down. 3 days passed and the lights gave out, and Caleb Rushton got up and said, we've no more water, nor light, nor bread, so we live on songs and hope instead. Live on songs and hope instead. Listen through the rubble for the barefaced miners. Listen through the rubble for a rescue team. 600 feet of coal and slag. Hope in prison in the 2-foot sea. Hope in prison in the 2-foot sea. 3 days passed and some were rescued, leaving the rest to die alone. Through all their lives they dug a grave, 2 miles of earth for a marking stone, 2 miles of earth for a marking stone. We only we only want the earth. We only want the earth. We only want the earth. Thank you.
I'm sorry I was late getting up to the platform. I had to struggle to the toilet on my crutches. And then I just realised, and I'm always reminded, how difficult it is for people with disability to get around this city and this country. And in front of me here is Sophie, who fights day and night for the right of access. And a big call out to Sophie and her campaign. Okay, there's a sheet missing on me. Can we put my sheet here? Right, that puts me in with a bit of difficulty. First of all, I just want to say that it looks fantastic from here, and the photographers want you all to hold up your signs high so they can get a good picture for the media. That's brilliant. Well, that's lovely, wonderful. Keep them held up there while they take the pictures. Can you seat. Okay, is that good enough now? You've got enough pictures? Thanks very much. Well done, everyone. This is a fantastic protest again. First of all, I just want to say what a great privilege it's been to work with all the groups and all of the groups that have endorsed this march and the protest throughout Ireland today. And I'll just run through them as we go through the protest. The National Women Council of Ireland, the Union of Students of Ireland, UCD and NCAD Students' Union, the Irish Second Level Students' Union, Unite the Union, the Teachers' Union of Ireland, the Association of Secondary School Teachers, the Dublin Trades Council, and I'll read out more as we go through. But it has been a privilege, and I think the message went out earlier, and I'll just repeat it. Together we are stronger, and together we must stay in order to fight this mountain we have to climb. Because behind me here is the so-called Taoiseach's office, and where the government sits. And their new plan to tackle climate change is a regurgitation of the same old, and really is doing nothing to create an atmosphere and a future for social justice and real change in this country. So this shout out today is so hugely important. I know people don't want to stand around for hours listening to speakers, so I am going to ask the speakers to keep their contributions to the very max of 3 minutes, and we'll try and get through them. But I think in fairness to those who've helped create this movement and who have very strong messages to say, we'll go straight into them. The first one I want to welcome is Jerry Loftus, who's a Mayo farmer and is the chair of the Rural Ireland organisation. Jerry's message is important, particularly to us in the city, who don't really understand the challenges facing the production of food and small and family farmers in this country, and what the Department of Agriculture, which is also behind me, has done to stress out the production of food and the lives of the family farmers in Ireland. So please give Jerry Loftus a big welcome.
Hello everybody, great to see such a crowd here today, and it is a pleasure to be here. My name is Jerry Loftus from the west of Ireland, County Mayo, and the leader of the Rural Ireland organisation. And of course we're here today for several and many reasons. We're all seriously concerned about the situation that we're in as regards climate change, but one of the most reasons we are here is the continuous failure of successive governments this past 25 years, and has continuously ignored the science and let us, the people of Ireland, down. And to rectify that, one of the measures that they now want to take is to cripple every old person, every young person, every poor person, every middle class person with the burden of billions of money in carbon tax to make up for their massive mistakes. We represent small farmers in the West. We have a lot of farmers who are so grossly and unfairly treated in the Common Agricultural Policy. That started in the year 2005 under a Fianna Fáil government with Mary Coughlin, Minister for Agriculture, so that they could engineer 80% of the money to 20% of the farmers to create an industrialised, business-led model of Irish agriculture. You, the taxpayer, and you, the people of our cities and towns and everywhere else, needs to be aware of exactly what has gone on and what is still going on today. The inadequacies in a broken food system, we will pay the price for. And I'm calling on everybody here today that it's time you had your say on what is happening, because your money has been used to do this. Every single citizen of this country, every taxpayer, pays about 700 euros into the Common Agricultural Policy in tax over the 7 years of the policy. That money was dummied out to create massive farms, massive dairy and beef producers who claimed and want to still claim all of that money on the smaller farmers across rural Ireland. Since the 80s, we have lost 243,000 small farmers because of this system. So you, the people, are paying for that. 90% of everything that's produced in this country is exported. It's produced with your money. And then you are burdened with the next obstacle in your way. You pay 9 billion euros per year to import food into this country. Your money that will pay billions of fines because of Ireland's miserable attempt at reducing our carbon emissions just by 7% in the year 2020. The blatant political thuggery that I hear on national airwaves and on national television by politicians is an absolute and utter disgrace. In the Kyoto Protocol in 1997, Ireland picked renewable energy, transport and agriculture to reduce our emissions. Based on them three, carbon-rich soils, or peatland if you want to call it that, or bog, is the most valuable soil in the world to absorb and store carbon. We farm that type of land. Many farmers across rural Ireland farm that type of land. That is the sector of Irish agriculture that is now under serious threat. Our livelihoods, our small farms will be wiped out unless we stand together. Because the idea is that we should allow corporations and massive farmers to take over this country. That we should get rid of our animals, empty out our farms, and leave our land idle to absorb and store their emissions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is not going to happen. Let me assure you of that. Yeah. The one thing that we didn't include, and I want to touch on this briefly before I finish. The reason Bonamoor closed is because we could no longer continue to harvest peat. When our bogs are taken into consideration in 2025, if we haven't some effort made, the Irish member state would not be able to pay the fine. It's as simple as that. And why? Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and I'm not here to represent them Ryan, but while they throw all the blame over on the Green Party for doing this and every other party, and me for being here today, I suppose, as a farmer, it is grossly unfair. I want to thank every single person that organised this march here today. I want a big round of applause for Deputy Bree Smith, who has put a massive effort into getting this thing organised here today. I am calling on you to build on today that the people of urban and rural Ireland unite and that we stand together on this from this day forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jerry, and I think it's well worth listening to the message that Jeremy and the farmers have to give to us. This country has based itself around pampering Larry Goodman, Don Meats and Kerry Foods, who make billions from destroying the atmosphere and the CO2 going into the atmosphere in this country and putting the shoulder of the responsibility back onto the family and the small farmers. Goodman and his likes should be challenged and should be taken out for the profits that they make and made to pay to get rid of the carbon. The climate movement will be nowhere without young people, and I hugely warmly welcome our next speaker, Claire Ostick, the President of the Union of Students in Ireland.
Thank you all very much. Before I go into saying a couple of words, I just want us all to take a couple of seconds to see how many people are around us. For a very long time, thousands of people have to come together on the Global Day of Action for Climate Justice. We're having a protest in Dublin, in Galway, in Belfast, in Waterford, and all around the world to have our voice heard. So while we're here, before I go into a couple of points from the student perspective and the young people's perspective. I think it's really important that our voice is heard from the very front to the very back. So I'd like to do a couple of chants first. So what do we want? When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! Whose planet? Our planet! 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 Whose future? Our future! Whose future? Our future! Whose future? Our future! System change! Climate change! System change! Climate change! System change! Climate change! Louder! System change! Climate change! System change! Climate change! Whose planet? Our planet! Whose planet? Our planet! Whose planet? Our planet! When the planet's under attack, stand up, fight back! When the planet's under attack, stand up, fight back! I said when the planet's under attack, stand up, fight back! When the planet's under attack, stand up, fight back! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! And when do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! I said what do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? So what all of us are chanting together, and we feel that sense of anger and frustration and burn within us because we care about a cause so passionate as the climate emergency. We have to remember that we're stronger when we're united and when we're together and when we gather on the streets and make our voices heard. My name is Claire Ostick and I'm the President of the Union of Students in Ireland, and we represent over 374,000 students across the island of Ireland. And we have many student representatives here. To say that young people and students care about this issue. It's not good enough that for 10, 20, 30 years the same issue is on the agenda, but very little sustainable and effective change has happened. We demand better and more urgency from our government, from world leaders, to tackle the climate emergency. All of us are here today to make sure that going forward, together we unite a movement, that we're together and stronger. Perfect. So just before I go again, I just want to say thank you to all the organisers for everyone coming out together. No issue is too small or too large to have a say and do something meaningful about it. So I encourage you all to educate yourselves together, to keep fighting the good fight and make sure that climate action happens now. So I'll do one more chat before I go. But what do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! Thank you.
Well done, Claire. Thanks very much. I've been asked to just read out a few more organisations that supported this. Community Work Ireland, Climate and Health Alliance, the Irish Heart Foundation, the Organic Centre, Animal Rebellion, Cork Environmental Forum, Unite Against Racism, Co-Watch, Coastwatch, Co-Love, Co-Sale, and Kashka, FASTA, and I've more to read out. So it's a wonderful show of unity here. We want to keep this going. We want to keep a campaign for climate justice, which means social justice, going in this country until we get the real measures in place that will make a difference to our environment, to our climate, and to our people. Our next speaker is an activist in his union and a transport worker and a really good fighter on climate action. I'd like you to welcome Eoin McCormack, please.
Thank you. One of the key 5 demands of this march today has been a demand and a campaign that we have to continue on for free, frequent and accessible public transport. In the years ahead, that has to be one of the key demands, and I want to make a brief case for it as to why it's so important. I don't personally believe, and people can have different opinions, that 1 million EVs is possible. I don't necessarily believe that 1 million EVs will also reduce the CO2 emissions by the levels we need in transport. But I know what will. And what will is a mass transit and a mass public transport infrastructure. And it will also do something else. Not only will it dramatically reduce the CO2 emissions that we need so desperately in the next 4 or 5 years, not only will it do what Paris says, not only is it a radical and far-reaching policy,
but it also changes the entire debate about climate change. It will change it for whole rural communities. It will increase inclusivity. It will reach out to communities all across this country and say, we have a vision of the future that's different to the present. And it's different to what we're constantly bombarded with. Because one other thing it does is also, we are constantly told as individuals, what are you going to do as an individual? What are you going to sacrifice as an individual? These are questions, incidentally, that I noticed are never asked of Mark Zuckerberg or Bezos. It is only asked of individuals. And we have to rescue, we have to take that narrative away from that. We have to say the profound truth about public transport and about many of the changes we need to make. Is that far from being a sacrifice on individuals, far from being a drain or a tax on individuals, the changes we need to make to address climate chaos can improve the lives of the vast majority of ordinary people in this country. And lastly, what a mass investment programme on public transport will do is it will create those just transition jobs. That's the second key element of this campaign. Because we know we have to make changes in aviation. We know we have to make changes in the fossil fuel industry. And if we reach out to those workers to say the future for you is low pay and precarious work, we will lose them. We will lose them to the lawyers. When we say the future is decent, well-paid jobs in new industries, such as public transport, we can build a mass movement that will challenge the policy and the government and the policies of this government and the rest of the country. So please support that demand and support the demand for just transition.
Thanks very much, Owen. I think that's a huge important campaign for free frequent public transport, which would go all the way, as Owen said, to making a real difference to our climate plan. You may have noticed the central role that women are playing in this movement, and there's no accident on that. And our next speaker is somebody who's not unfamiliar to many movements in Ireland and has played a huge role in getting us here today. Orla O'Connor from the National Women's Council.
Because we're marching for our sons and daughters and future generations to have a world to live in. And we're marching so that the countries and people most vulnerable to this time of crisis. Oh, am I not? Sorry. We're marching so that the countries and people most vulnerable to this time of crisis have a future. Sorry, I'm smaller. Marching. The microphone needs to come down. We are marching for women. Because it is women who are bearing the brunt of climate disasters. Women who are dealing with the impact of droughts, flooding, displacement, food and water scarcity and climate disasters as they try to provide for their families and for their communities. Mary Robinson said this week, climate crisis is a man-made problem and we must have a feminist solution. The kind of life future generations will inherit from us depends on the decisions that we make right now, and a feminist green agenda has to be at the centre. But where were the women at COP? Pale, male and stale is how COP has been described. And where are the women who need to be at the centre in Ireland? Where are no parents, women of colour, working class women, traveller women, Roma women, women seeking asylum, disabled women, carers? These are the women that we know will pay the highest price as climate change worsens. My hero this week is without doubt Greta Thunberg. It should be obvious, she said, that we cannot solve the crisis with the same methods that got us into this in the first place. And it's so clear that the Irish government has not got this message as it launched its climate action plan this week. Its main focus is on individuals and the private market. It typifies the government approach of leaving such critical issues to the private realm and failing to recognise and commit to the central role of the state. It is completely divorced from reality. Can a woman on a low-paid job, where the majority of women workers are, can they afford to buy an electric car? Absolutely. Can a woman, a lone parent, who is struggling to pay bills, who can't afford afford rent, whose social welfare doesn't keep pace with inflation? Can she pay the increasing energy bills and make these private decisions to buy green? And when the policy, and it's right, keep calls for extending public transport, but when it makes no wider reference to making transport safe and free from harassment and violence and investing in services that are violence against women, it shows absolutely no understanding of the reality of women's lives and the actions that are needed in this kind of crisis. Climate action has to be rooted in equality and anti-poverty actions. It has to be rooted in equality for women and investment in public services. We have to have a new economic and social model that takes account of equality, human rights and environmental sustainability, and particularly recognises the value of care to guarantee a decent quality of life for us all. We have to deliver in this feminist green agenda universal basic services, not based on ability to pay. And we have to develop and resource our public services to ensure that we can all have a decent and common quality of life. And care is at the centre of that feminist agenda. Care work produces significantly less emissions, care jobs are green jobs, and investing in care services like childcare and universal health care is what we need, not these economic approaches that we're facing at the moment. It means investing in social protection and social welfare that facilitates women and men to play an equal role in care and paid work. And we have to have a flexible model such as a 4-day working week. So we need a feminist new Green Deal to ensure that all women and girls can live in a just and equal society. And we need climate justice for all. And the time is now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Orla. I'll just go through a few more of the groups that are supporting us. Farmers Friends, the Irish Wildlife Trust, Leave No Trace, Tree School, We Are the Earth, Home Tree, the Irish Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the Independent Farmers of Ireland, the Rural Organisation, the Rural Ireland Organisation, the Peatlands Gathering, Friends of the RD Bob, Love Leitrim, Climate Case Ireland, Future Proof Clare, Safety Before LNG, Not Here, Not Anywhere, and Friends of the Earth. So it's a really fantastic broad campaign. I want to welcome another TD and a colleague of mine, Paul Murphy of People Before Profit.
Thanks for that. The climate hypocrisy of the world's leaders knows no bounds. Eamon Ryan has an article in today's Irish Times where he quotes Greta Thunberg saying no more blah blah blah. Eamon, she's talking about you. What is signing up to an agreement to cut methane emissions by 30% and then turning around and saying the next day, oh, it's a global target, we're not actually planning to meet it? That is blah blah blah. What else is talking about afforestation when you're cutting down 5 more trees for every tree that you plant, and you're planning to privatise yet more of Quilcha? Blah, blah, blah. Refusing to tell the truth that to meet the targets, the number of cattle in this state must be reduced. Pretending that it's because we feed the world, when actually we import calories and we export baby formula to China. Pretending that it's because of the small farmer who they don't care about. Blah, blah, blah. The truth is, and we have to speak the truth, that it's because the government
represents big agribusiness. In the Dáil, on a couple of occasions, they've said, who are these beef barons you're talking about? What is this big agribusiness that you're talking about? Well, they can ask Simon Coveney. His brother is the head of Green Corps. They can ask Larry Goodman, who supports their political parties, the beef barons, Green Corps, Kerry Group, Glanbia and the rest. They are the equivalent of the fossil fuel industry in this country, and they have the same political power. And they want to continue with a model of agriculture that fails small farmers and destroys our climate and biodiversity. Why? Because it makes profits for them. Because our whole agricultural system is built not to produce food, but to make profits. And when we say we need system change, we should name that system for-profit production. The capitalist system is at the root of the ecological and social crises that we face. And just as we have to keep fossil fuels in the ground, we have to take big agribusiness out of private ownership and into democratic public ownership. Run it not for profit, but for our environment and our small farmers. Guarantee a decent income for small farmers, which they're currently denied. Reorganise the subsidies to incentivise sustainable, regenerative farming. Pay farmers not to engage in industrial farming of beef and dairy, but to pursue vital ecosystem and carbon sequestration services for all of us. The final thing I want to say is that one of the biggest weapons of the fossil fuel industry and big agribusiness right now is pessimism. The idea that it's too late. So what's the point to make your life more difficult? And we have to give an answer to climate fatalism. And in my opinion, that's giving an eco-socialist vision to people of what a society based on climate and social justice would look like. One with free, green and frequent public transport. One with quality, zero carbon, public housing decommodified. A national health service for all. Green jobs retrofitting our homes, building renewable energy, restoring our nature. One with decent income for rewarding work and more leisure time. One where we don't have to beg and demand that the bosses and the government do what's right, but where we have control of our lives and our society through democratic ownership of our economy so we can plan for all of our needs. We have a world to win. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Paul. And before I introduce the next Paul, I just want to call out a few more of the groups that are backing the climate justice campaign. Just Transition Greens, People Before Profit, Sinn Féin, the Social Democrats, the Labour Party, the Socialist Party, Unmerited Loss, the Right to Change and Extinction Rebellion. I think I've read nearly all of them now. I'm sorry if I left anyone out. It is not intentional. And anybody else who wants to email us at the COP26 Coalition and join in this initiative to create a broad mass campaign for social justice equals climate justice in this country. We're absolutely proud and welcome to have everybody on board. This is another Paul, and I'm probably going to get his name wrong because it's double-barreled and I'm just getting mixed up. Paul McCormack Cooney from Extinction Rebellion.
A good-looking crowd. So my name is Paul McCormack Cooney. I'm a member of Extinction Rebellion. But I'm standing here as a dad of two young kids. My daughter Sophia is 11, my son Finn is 8 years old, and I'm deeply worried about the future that they're facing. If you humour me for a second to just look up into the sky, and just everybody look up. Can you see the greenhouse gases up there? You can't. They're there. there, they're all around us right now. They're there in a concentration of 416 parts per million, and we haven't seen that level in over 4 million years. The last time there was that much, sea levels were 20 meters higher and the planet was 3 to 4 degrees warmer, and there were no humans around. You might ask, well, why isn't it like that now? And it's like if you take a pot of water and you stick it on your stove and you turn the heat right up, it doesn't boil straight away. So we've effectively hit the top heat switch on the planet at the moment. And while we've been lucky enough not to see it boiling here yet, it's starting to boil in other places around the world. In Madagascar, they're on the brink of famine at the moment. We've seen the wildfires in California, in Australia, in Greece, in Siberia. And just this past summer, a year's worth of rain was dumped in Henan province in China in just 4 days. And a quarter of that fell in just 1 hour, and they were totally unprepared for it. The longer that we wait to stop adding to that, the more intense those events are going to become, and the more frequent that they're going to become, and then the more places we're going to see them. So it's hard to have hope sometimes, but what gives me hope is the crowd of people here today in front of me. You guys give me hope. The government's climate action plan doesn't give me hope. It doesn't give me hope for the same reasons that their housing plan doesn't give me hope. I can't afford a house, let alone retrofit one. So it's you guys who give me hope. And if we can build a movement where all of our struggles are joined together and where we're fighting for each other, shoulder to shoulder, one that's built on mutual respect and love, then the future that my kids are facing doesn't look as scary to me. So let's make this the beginning of something. You're a fine looking crowd, and I hope to see you again. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Paul. And we're coming towards the end. I know you're all wet and probably dying to go somewhere for coffee or whatever. So without any delay, I'd love to welcome Lynn Boylan, Senator from Sinn Féin.
I just want to congratulate everybody for coming today. It's great to see this turnout demanding real climate action from all of our politicians and the government. We have a climate action plan that was released this week that's based on the principles of eco-austerity. A climate action plan that's based on the hope that the people will cough up the 125 billion by retrofitting their homes and buying electric cars. Only this week, Flack warned of the thousands of families across this country that are building up debt from the pandemic. Without state-led funding, climate action is only going to leave people and communities behind, creating even more inequality. This government has choices. How about we end the fossil fuel subsidies? How about we end the 80% tax breaks for data centres? Those of us who believe in climate justice must unite to ensure that we have a truly just transition. All communities must be part of that transition, and we can't fall into the trap of pitting rural versus urban, farmer versus environmentalist, young versus old. That's what the corporations want you to do. That's what agribusiness wants you to do. It's what the fossil fuel companies want you to do. It's what Amazon Web Services want you to do. Because if we're pointing the fingers at each other, we're not pointing the fingers at them. Don't fall for it, folks. United we are stronger. It's communities versus corporations. And it's time this government ditched the Energy Charter Treaty, a dinosaur for the fossil fuel past that leaves citizens like you on the hook for fossil fuel stranded assets. Right now in the EU, the leaders, including our own government, are trying to carve out protections for themselves while they expand the treaty into the oil and gas-rich global south. That's not climate justice, that's neo-colonialism. And like offshore wind, but we also need our 30% marine protected areas. Our oceans are rich in biodiversity and they're a carbon sink. We cannot settle for what is left after offshore wind is built. We must do protection at the same time as we do the planning. So the message leaving today has to be no eco-austerity, no ecocide, no LNG terminals, no Mercosur, no CETA, no energy charter treaty, no business as usual, but yes to system change, yes to climate action, and yes to climate justice.
We're coming towards the end and I don't want to delay anyone, so I'm going to ask our next speaker, who's the chairperson of the Dublin, or the president I should say, of the Dublin Council of Trade Unions, Betty Tyrrell Collard.
Good afternoon everybody, and you're very welcome to this protest. Climate change is a workers' issue and trade unions all over the world are marching today towards real action on the COP26 conference in Glasgow. The Global Solidarity Committee of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions has called for support for today's march. The Dublin Council of Trade Unions is supporting the march today and the need for action on climate change because the poorest will be hit worst by climate change, because the emissions from big fossil fuel corporations must be cut back, and because there has to be a just transition into sustainable energy and into employment that ensures the income, job security and conditions of working people moving to new ways of working. This week's climate action plan from the government was not place an extra burden on working people to pay for the climate crisis, which would only help the vested interest in trying to get workers and farmers to oppose the vital cuts needed in greenhouse gas emissions. Time is short and action cannot be delayed. As the country's biggest trade union said in their Just Transition proposals, there are no jobs on a dead planet. Thank you.
He said that's 2 minutes, fair play for George and Steve. And last but not least, I want to really have an emphasis on the next speaker, who's representing the interests of the Bordemona workers. And this is important because the first hurdle in delivering a just transition that this government has faced was the Bordemona workers. And Gino Dowd from Unite is going to speak here today on their behalf. And then we'll finish off with a short song and a load of slogans. Thanks very much. So as Breed said, I'm here today on behalf of my union members in Bordemona, but not just my union members, all union members and all workers and the communities. I myself, in a former life before I got into the trade union movement, worked down on those bogs in Bordemona. I worked alongside those workers. I know the area, I know the towns, I know the villages and I know the communities. For decades, Bordemona has provided vital jobs in the Irish Midlands, including part-time work which has kept many part-time farmers afloat. Bordemona is, without fail, or should I say was, the lifeblood of many rural communities. In 2015, the company announced that the harvesting of peat for power generation would be phased out by 2030, at which point the company would complete its transition to new sustainable businesses located across its bogs and land holdings. In fact, the suspension of peat harvesting was announced 10 years ahead of schedule. No forward thinking. The closure of 2 Midlands power stations has caused up to 1,500 job losses in Bordemona alone, with hundreds more job losses lost in secondary businesses downstream. To add insult to industry, at the same time the harvesting of peat is being suspended locally, it is being imported from Germany, Latvia and Lithuania. Think about that. We're buying peat abroad, we're putting it on boats, we're ferrying it across the sea into Dublin Port, where there's hundreds of trucks waiting to ferry it across the country. Unite and the other unions representing Bordemona workers have consistently called for a clear roadmap detailing projected numbers while ensuring security of employment and earnings.
The government has trumped its €28 million Just Transition Fund, but the complex application process and matching fund requirements mean that workers and communities in the Midlands have yet to see much tangible benefit from those funds. And let's call a spade a spade. 28 million is a pittance when compared to the income stream that is being taken out of those communities in the Midlands. The government and Board Mona management have also talked a lot about just transition training, upskilling and reskilling. But again, this is not evident on the ground. Our members have not been fully consulted regarding retraining plans, and in some cases, training opportunities are being advertised in local media without the knowledge of HR, never mind our members. As a result of this, there is a fear that only the people with access to management influence will be able to access meaningful retraining and further education, while for others retraining may simply be for less skilled jobs with poorer pay and conditions. A more gradual and strategic just transition plan developed with real union and community input would have given Board Mona more time to examine their other potential ventures which would not have maintained employment, but would also have added economic value both to the Midlands and across the country. Board Mona is a highly unionised semi-state company with a public interest. Yet both Board Mona and the government have paid lip service to the just transition. If that is the experience in a semi-state company, what would the experience have been in a private sector company with low levels of unionisation? So far, Board Mona has been an example of what a transition which is not just for either workers or communities, and it offers lessons for the trade union movement across Ireland. We need to take steps to ensure that where there are threats to jobs as a result of climate change, there is just transition, securing workers' rights and livelihoods while shifting to sustainable production. It is a struggle of the union, the workers and the communities that took place all around the Midlands, such as the events that happened in Shannonbridge, that forced the government to take action at all. The fight is not over, and we are laying down a marker not only for Board Mona but for all workers, and that the only transition is a just transition where workers' jobs, pay, conditions are protected in a new green economy and in their communities as well. Unite members and Board Mona have experienced what happens when there is no just transition. And I stand here before you today and I pledge that I will stand up for the Board Mona workers, communities and every single worker that these transitions are impacting on, and I urge you to do the same. Can I get 3 cheers of support for Board Mona? Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
Thank you all very much for being so patient and giving everybody a chance to say how climate action needs to be implemented from their perspective. That was really important to us, and I know we don't control the weather, but fair play to you for staying along, and thanks very much. We're going to finish up with a bit of rabble-rousing from Ono Canavan, and just from my perspective I want to thank all the groups who worked so hard to get this going, and we have to keep it going. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thanks very much. Shall we now let's sing together? Power to the people. Power to the people. 'Cause the people got the power. People got the power. Tell me, can you feel it? Tell me, can you feel it? Getting stronger by the hour. Stronger by the hour. Power. 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 Power to the people. Power to the people. 'Cause the people got the power. People got the power. Tell me, can you feel it? Tell me, can you feel it? Getting stronger by the hour. Stronger by the hour. Power. 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 When the planet's on the line, not one worker left behind. When the planet's on the line, not one worker left behind. When the justice. What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
Finish off with a bit of James Connolly. We only want the earth. We only
We only want the earth!
We only
We only want the earth!
We only want the earth. We only want the earth. We only want the earth. You.
Go home, get dry, have a cup of coffee or a pint. Thanks a million. And the coalition, this coalition for social justice is only starting. We keep in touch and let you know when we're out together again, when we strike together again, when we march together again. Well done, everyone.